Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy, and this is the lecture for the month of October 2012, and it is entitled Double Your Speed, Double Your Fun. Now that's quite a claim. Do I think I can get you to be twice as fast in Animator as you are right now? Yes, I do. And what it takes is you to, if you haven't already, finally commit to workflow. And so this could be considered the advanced workflow lecture. And there's one aspect that I want you to turn up to 11 in order to get there. Okay? So what am I planning on doing? If you don't know already, I mean, if you're new to the site or you haven't seen many of these lectures, then you might not be aware that I'm kind of the workflow Nazi. I am so over the top with workflow, I make it basically my primary goal. Sometimes it seems like my only goal. And the reason that is because I have seen something very tragic happen to a lot of animators. Well, not tragic in the global sense, of course, but I've seen something that's very avoidable, and it's very discouraging to them and to me when I see it happen to them. Okay, and what that is one of two things. Either they can create animation that looks good, but they don't know how they got to that result, and that normally happens when, if we're working together, I give them enough notes that it turns out great, and they can follow the notes and whatever, but they haven't picked up anything that they can recreate, that they can do for themselves from that. And for me, it's tragic because there was really nothing gained. Their workflow did not expand, grow, become stronger. And the second tragic thing is that when there is a complete lack of awareness of workflow at all, and a person is consistently making great animation, but every single time it's almost like an emergency. It's almost as if they're starting completely over and have to rediscover everything about creating a shot again. And some of the animators that I've worked with, some of the animators I've worked very close with in studios have been like that. And it's been my kind of goal to make it so that that doesn't happen to anybody that I train, that I'm a part of your education. Okay. So you probably already know that about me from watching the lectures, seeing the video mails, that workflow is basically, for me, it's king. Okay. So, but double your speed, double your fun. Well, I can guarantee you your fun's going to more than double if you're producing animation at double the speed. But how am I making this claim? How is that possible? I've talked with educators and schools and people just involved in the animation training world, and what I've seen, and to the people that I've discussed this with, what we agree on is that there is not enough of an emphasis on practice in animation training. Anyone who's ever played sports knows that when you're playing a sport, you don't just arrive at the practice, if it's at the gym or on the field or whatever, and then just play the sport. That's not how you get good at the sport. If it's soccer or football for my European, or anyone outside America, I should say, if it's a sport like that, then you don't just arrive on the field and just start playing the game. No, you practice dribbling the ball. You practice getting around your opponents. You run all the time. You're just constantly running. All right? You have to practice shooting. All of these skills. And then, yeah, sure, you do a little bit of scrimmaging at the end of practice. You play against each other, but mostly it's drills. Same thing with basketball. You know, you don't just arrive and just play basketball your entire practice. You have to practice dribbling as well. You have to practice shooting. You have to practice passing. You have to practice plays. You have to practice offensive plays, defensive plays, okay? And all of these skills, and you drill them. You take away the context that it is in, and you focus on just that skill completely out of context, okay? And the removal of that context is something that helps. It seems like it's a thing that makes it so that you're not getting the full experience, but that's the point. And so it's so difficult to tell students that they need to remove that context, because removing all the context seems to remove all of the fun. But it doesn't. It actually allows you, it opens up the concept for you to really drill it. All right, so I'm going to use that term drill instead of exercises or practice from now on, because these really should be drills. Okay? There are no, and think about it. You probably haven't done any drills in the true sense of the word. You haven't probably done any drills trying to learn animation, have you? You haven't sat down, for instance, you haven't sat down at a scene that's really super simple, 48 frames, 96 frames, right? So 2 to 4 seconds max, and just done the overlap on the spine, and then deleted it and done it again, and deleted it and done it again, and spent 30 minutes to an hour just doing like overlap on the spine on this one kind of action. Maybe it's like a land, like that. Land, settle, right? You probably haven't done that. The first time you do it, it would probably take you 10 minutes. The next time probably take you 8 minutes, and then 6 minutes, 5 minutes. And once you get to 5 minutes, you might think to yourself, wait, I've obviously, done this enough times. I'm kind of cheating because I have, I know exactly what I'm going for. Number one, I don't see how that's cheating. Because if you encounter something like this, something exactly like this, or even kind of remotely like this situation, you've drilled it, and so you get that work that you've done. You did the work, so it's not cheating. And number two, did you just notice how you went from 10 minutes to 5 minutes? You doubled your speed. All right? And so that's basically the concept that we're talking about right now. Turning your animation training from basically running onto the field and playing the game, running into the gym and playing the game, to doing drills, okay? Another analogy, I don't think I've given this in a lecture before. I've definitely given this in a lot of live settings. And I think I might have said this in a webcast. So if you've heard this before, I think it bears repeating. And so sit tight. Just bear with me. One analogy I love to use, because it uses so many different skills, is snipers, like military snipers, right? Long distance gunmen, right? And so an animator, when you decide you want to be an animator, what you do is you look at finished animation. You look at beautiful, perfect, polished animation from Pixar, perfect, polished Pixar animation. What a zesty cornucopia of alliteration. You look at that animation and you see that as the end goal. You focus on that as the end goal. And then in order to get there, how you feel is, I need to start here and do that to get there, right? So I need to start as soon as, there's a little bit that people pretty much understand they can't avoid, like learning the fundamentals and doing at least a bouncing ball and like maybe a pendulum on a ball with a tail, just like a few of those things. But normally then they jump right into multi-character dialogue sequences, lip sync, full body performances, all that stuff. Okay. What you're doing is you're trying to learn how to get there to that end goal by just doing it, okay? Now, the reason I like to use the sniper analogy is because it has so many esoteric skills, like I said, but also people understand when you start this story that it is completely impossible for somebody to do right off the bat, okay? So, you get off the bus at the sniper camp, okay? And the job of a sniper is to hit a target about that wide, so about 3 inches wide, from a kilometer away, 1,000 meters, every time. That's your job. 1,000 meters, 3 inches wide, every time. That's your job. That is your job description. Now, a job of an animator is to inject performance, create motion, believable, realistic, engaging in any shot, every time. That's the job of an animator, okay? Now, would you be so crazy to assume that you could actually step off the bus at sniper school, they hand you a .50 caliber rifle, which you've never shot before, and the best way and the quickest way to start hitting that target 1,000 meters away, this big, every time, is to just, fine, okay, great, drop my backpack, get down on my belly, and just start shooting at it. No, right? Ridiculous. No one would ever do that. Would they? I don't think so. But that is what animators do. They get as little information as possible. They get as little drilling as possible before they basically they go for that end result. As you know, just like head first. What actually happens at sniper school is you get off the bus and then you go and you pick your bunk in the barracks. Okay, and you have to keep that area absolutely perfectly clean. All right, teaches you to have discipline. You have to run. You have to be able to run a very long distance. You'll run like 5-10 miles a day. All right, sometimes more. Why? Because a sniper needs to be able to be dropped. Part of the job description of hitting that target is getting to that target. You'll be dropped miles away from your target, and you need to run to your vantage point and set up. Once you get there, you're going to be dead tired. But you need to be able to fire your weapon consistently, even when you are exhausted. The slightest amount of variation, the slightest amount, can mean that you miss your target by 10 meters. And that's not your job. Your job is to hit it every time. So they actually train themselves to be able to lower their heart rate. So when you run that half marathon and then drop down on your belly on the top of a hill a kilometer away from your target, you need to be able to do your breathing exercises and your meditative practice and bring your heart rate down. When you fire your gun, you need to fire it between heartbeats, because even the variation in your body that occurs when your heart beats is enough to make you miss your target. You need to be able to understand inclination, distance, wind speed, even temperature. Outside temperature has a effect on the trajectory of your bullet. So all of those things need to be calculated. So you need to not only be able to lower your heart rate and physically calm yourself down, you need to be able to mentally calm yourself down and do all of the adjustments and the calculations you need to hit your target. And then when your gun goes off, the sniper scope actually kicks. And you have to keep your eye open no matter what so you can see if you hit your target. Because if you don't hit your target on that first shot, you have to be able to take another shot that will hit the target. So you have to keep your eye open the entire time. I've heard that what they do is at the end of the day, they'll take their scopes off of their rifles and they'll hold them up to their eyes, and then the drill sergeant walks up and down the line of men and bangs the scope into your face. And you just have to stand there and take it. And they make sure that no one flinches. Can't even flinch. Why? Again, you have to be able to keep your eye open. So you put all these things together, all right? These are completely removed from context, right? Especially, I mean, think about it. You take your scope off your gun, it's not even in the firing context. They're not even taking that context along with it of firing your gun. No, they remove all the context. And you're just holding the scope there, and it just gets banged into your face, okay? So, but can you see how valuable it is to remove that context, okay? Because not only after you're done getting your scope banged into your eye socket, you have to put your scope back on your rifle. And that is a skill. What if you fall down and your rifle hits the ground and the scope slips or it comes off or whatever? You have to be able to know exactly how the equipment works and how to put it back together again. All right, so I think this analogy has gone on enough. I think you can see that the running, the meditative training, the mental training, the calculations, the discipline, the firing practice, and all that stuff adds up to make what, if you know how to do all of those component pieces perfectly every time, you will be able to finally hit that target. But they won't even let you hit that target right off the bat. You'll start at 50 meters, 100 meters, 200, 300, 400, 500, until that target is all the way, a kilometer away, and then you can hit it. So you will be not only attempting all of the, you'll be not only doing all of the drills, but even your attempts to put those component skills together will start easy. Those attempts will be they'll start very easy, and then they'll get harder and harder and harder. All right, very analogous to how I say to students who are learning before, I wouldn't do any 11-second club entries until I had maybe 20 or 30 2 to 4 second, maybe 5 second, probably not, but 2 to 4 second full body, head to toe posing, body mechanics, and kind of simple acting tests. Like 30 is a good, actually baseline number. Okay. See, because I did it wrong. I did it like everybody else does it, and it took me 5 years actually before I actually produced anything that when I showed it to somebody they actually thought it was animation. All right, 5 years is a long time. Animation Mentor is 18 months, and they've produced some fantastic animators in 18 months. It's the people though that hunker down, commit to workflow, and have a serious commitment to the craft. All right, that go to Pixar after they go to AM. But it's possible to bring that time that it takes down for everybody. I think you can do it. Okay. I think I could have done it if I knew what I knew now. If I could take one piece, I've said this many times, if I could start all over, roll back the clock 15 years, start all over and and keep one piece of information that I know now about animation, it would be for at least 2 years to never do a single test over 125 frames. Or what would 120 frames would be 5 seconds. I would never do a single piece of animation over 5 seconds. All right? Really, of all the things I know, that would be the one thing that I take back with me. So think about that. Okay? So just like, so we have that whole like world, that picture built for us of that sniper, right? So just imagine that. Imagine you are enlisted into the army, or you're drafted or whatever, and you go to sniper school, and you get off the bus with your backpack, and someone walks right up to you and says, how do you want to learn, how do you want to do this? Would you really think to yourself, all right, I'll take a .50 caliber gun, put the target 1,000 meters away, I'm just going to shoot at it all day, and yeah, eventually I'll start hitting it. And you would, but it'd probably take you 5 years, like it took me. All right? Instead, you should get off the bus and say, I actually don't know what goes into shooting. I don't. So show me. All right? And then they'll say, all right, drop off your pack in the barracks. We're going for a 10-mile run. And you'd be like, what? You know? Okay. So don't be like everybody that assumes that to do it, you need to do the whole thing. You need to actually focus down on that. And so that's how we're going to double your speed. I'll give you one more analogy before we dive into some animation itself. When I was a young man in school, I would get so distracted. I had ADD that they didn't, you know, my mom never took me to the doctor to get diagnosed, and obviously never gave me medicine for it, but whatever. I could not pay attention. I could not focus. I would have such trouble that when we would take like math tests, like in 4th grade, 5th grade, I would just like go off. I would be nowhere. I could not even like look at the page in front of me. But one time I remember I discovered that I could multiply. It was the whole, I told the story differently, but I don't think I remembered what it was. I think it was I discovered 9. Like when you multiply anything by 9, then all the numbers, the result, if you add them together, it always adds up to 9. Always. And I was like, oh my God, I have discovered the secret of the universe. And I remember I saw that, and so you have your little quiz, right? Little piece of paper. So imagine, this is the quiz, and on the margins, I filled up the margins with any number I could think of, and I had to keep on doing it. And so when I turned in my quiz, it's just a normal times tables quiz, and I got like 2 of them right. Why? Because the only 2 I did was like 9, and then I filled up the margins with all of these tests, basically, all these little like experiments, okay? And so that's how I want you to start learning animation, or to tweak how you deal with a shot in that way. I need you to start working in the margins. I need you to start doing experiments on the sides of your test. And by doing that, you will open up this kind of secret about really, really awesome professional animators that I don't think is told, not because they're like protecting it, but I don't think that people have really identified this and really expressed this. Okay? And it goes back to what I was saying about how in animation training there's not enough emphasis on drills. This is that thing. The drills that you should be doing are moments in your animation where the best result is beyond your imagination. Now that's something that could be construed a little, controversial, because there's nothing that's beyond our imagination. And I agree with that to a certain extent. However, there are times when, like, I've been critiquing a piece of animation, like on AEM, and I've said, you know what? This could be like 2 frames, 4 frames, 6 frames. I'm not sure. Why don't you just do all 3 and pick the best, okay? And that's one time, and I haven't really even honed in on that, or like when I do that, thought, clearly to myself, oh, well, that's what I'm doing. Oh, I just made them do that. It came from honesty. It was totally an honest moment where I was just saying, it could be this, this, or this, and I'm not quite sure what's going to look best. So you decide. And that's how I feel it is expressed by these really fantastic, phenomenal animators, is kind of like just that moment where they say that. But if we stop and we realize that what we're actually asking people to do, or what we're actually doing on our own, is working in the margins and doing a little drill in the middle of our work, I think that will kind of focus and shine a spotlight on where the education needs to go. And there are moments when, and I say this, and it's not fully to, it's not exactly selfless. It is sometimes a little bit to absolve me of the responsibility of coming up with what is perfect for the moment. But what I will say is, you know what? This could be this, or it could be that. And I honestly believe that nobody can tell. You can imagine it, and you can get really close in your mind at what is going to look better. But truthfully, you actually do need to see it, and you need to compare the kind of end result one to the other, and then pick that one. And I'm not afraid to admit that when that comes up, when that happens. I think there's a lot of times where we kind of assume too much, where we say to ourselves or think, I don't know, maybe this choice, maybe that choice, I'm going to go with this. And then you do, and you're happy with it. I think a little bit of like retrospect is kind of creeping in. I think you're kind of saying like, oh, well, this is good, and it's working out, it's turning out, and this was the better choice. I think you're saying that in retrospect. I don't think that we are enough, and myself included. I need to do a lot more of this all the time. We all do. But I don't think we're, there's a difference between actually doing it and walking down that path and just seeing it in retrospect. And that's another way that I like to put it. When you have choices, it's almost like paths in the road. But paths have turns, and you can only see down a path until it turns. And so that's kind of what I'm asking everyone to do, is when you're walking along and you're doing your animation, and then you come to a fork in the road, or it might be 3 forks or 4 prongs or whatever you want to call it, and you don't have you don't have zero sense of which way you should go, but you can only see down the path until it turns, and each path is hiding something from you. I say, to continue the analogy, walk down every single path. It might seem counterintuitive because you're spending a lot of time on basically ideas that you're not going to go with. But that's where drilling comes in. If you drill and drill and drill, you'll run down the path. You'll bolt down that path in 2 steps, at least until it turns. Walk every single path at least until it turns, at least until it reveals to you what it's hiding. And you will double your speed. Okay? There's this mystique that the best animators in the world start at 0 and 100 is in front of them, and they take one perfect step in front of another towards their goal. That's not the case. The best animators in the world work the most in the margins. They have an insanely refined ability to go to the ends of all paths and continue on from the best choice. If you've ever seen the movie Next, it's a horrible movie, but it's the perfect comparison to this. Don't pay to see this film, all right? But if you have Netflix, then maybe watch it. It's exactly the same thing, and it stars Nicolas Cage, and he's basically a guy that can see like 10 or 12 seconds into the future, something like that. And the way that they visually represent it is they show him sitting here, and basically like his body kind of like splits. It's almost like a ghost, right? So like he'll go and he'll like open up a door, and like someone will shoot him, and then it'll go back, you know, to when he made that decision, and then he'll go like, ugh, and then he'll go the other way. Like that's what would happen to me if I went that way, you know, 12 seconds into the future or whatever. So you can see all possible futures. That guy would be an amazing animator, wouldn't he? Right? That's what I'm asking you to be. Be that guy. One very, very, very last comparison, and then we'll jump into Maya for a little bit. You guys have great taste in animation, obviously, because you want to be animators, you want to work in studios, maybe you already are. Doesn't matter. You can pick out fantastic animation. In fact, I would say that given 10 shots, 10 ideas, just like small little animated, you know, ideas for the same shot, you could pick out the best one, right? Probably. I mean, think to yourself right now. Think if I presented you with 10, or maybe just 5. Out of five ideas, little animated moments, okay? So it's a guy and like he's really mad at that person. So does he punch him? Does he slap him? Does he backhand him? Does he push him? Does he kick him? Does he headbutt him? Whatever it is. Out of all of those, you could probably pick out the best one, right? I mean, you've been doing animation ostensibly, if you're on the site, you've been doing animation for far longer. So by now you're a huge fan of animation and your eye is very developed. So you could pick out the best one. I contend that the only difference between you and the best animator in the world is that when you're working, you think about those ideas. And when the best animator in the world is working, they do all those ideas. Or to put it another way, you can pick out the best out of 5 animated moments, but in the time it takes you to do one of your ideas, the best animator in the world has already animated 5 quick little tests, and they don't have to imagine what's the best one. They just pick the best one. Okay? So that's how we're going to double your speed. So, cool. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of working in the margins, and then one extra little thing, one way that I like to give myself the best, the quickest indication of the strongest idea. And it involves, I'm going to open up some of the How to Cheat in Maya 2012 scene files, and those are freely available for everybody at howtocheatinmaya.com. I'll attach them here as well, so you can download the file. It should be below, so you can grab those now if you haven't already, and follow along if you want to. But this is what I'm talking about. So if you don't feel like, if when we open up the scene, we start taking a look at it, if you don't think to yourself like, oh, here we go, now I'm going to do some drills, then you haven't got it yet. Okay, this is not just a demonstration that I want you to watch and then think to yourself like, oh, that was good. Can't wait for next week. New lecture in November. things are just going along. This I'm hoping that for everybody that this lecture is kind of like a moment where you say, you know what, I do need to practice differently. I do need to practice if I haven't already. Okay. All right. Overall point of all of this is you're going to double your speed when you stop trying to make shots. And that's why I like the sniper analogy, because it's taking shots, right? So you will get double your speed if you stop trying to just make shot after shot after shot and you start practicing. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. So download those files if you haven't already, and we're going to open up Maya. So if you go ahead and open up the secondary_start Maya scene file from the How to Cheat in Maya 2012. It's in 2013 as well. So you can download either one from howtocheatinmaya.com. In the book, what I show is how secondary animation can really influence a performance. And so this is what we have. We have a character, and it's very roughly animated, but you can see, even as rough as the animation is, you can clearly see how much the performance is affected by what we're doing. Okay? So the base animation is, let's see here. Here we go. 24 frames, okay. So the base animation is a guy, and I think the story I said is he's sitting at a library and someone walks in, okay? And he watches them walk by and then like thinks about them, and that's the end of the shot, okay? Very, very, very simple, all right? There's a little story to it, and the way that he watches them kind of indicates a little bit, there's obviously a relationship. It's not like he doesn't know who they are. You can kind of read it in his eyes. He kind of knows who they are, and he wouldn't think about it unless he did. So it could be as casual a acquaintance as they go to the same school, and it's like the popular girl, and he really likes her, and maybe he's thinking about, okay, I'll talk to her today, or something like that. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, there's a story there. And what in the book, what I did was I said, this animation that's on this layer called finger tap, if I turn it up, you see that his finger is tapping, okay? So it's kind of a random, I think it's almost randomized just rotation on that finger, and it has nothing to do with the base animation, right? But what I said was, if you key the weight of the finger animation layer, right? And then as he's watching her, you dial it down and you key it again, right? So it basically dies out. What you're doing is you're showing that the secondary action that he's doing, basically all that CPU power, all that brain power, as little as it was, needs to be put back up into his head. So it's kind of like even tapping his finger is too much distraction, or it's too much to do simultaneously to watching her walk by. Okay, so that being the case, we get a stronger sense that he knows this person, that he's thinking about them. Then I said, at the very tail of the animation, key it again, and then have it come back to life, basically. So it's as he starts going back to thinking about things, he taps his finger again. And so my proposal was that this scene with the secondary animation is a totally different scene from the scene that we saw before. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute this, and I'm going to play blast just an IFF from render real quick. I'm going to play blast both of them, and we'll hold them up next to each other, and you can see how different these are. Okay. All right, and now let's unmute that. Do it again. Okay. I love play blasting off screen. It's so nice. You know, on Linux, I used to have a couple different desktops, and I think it's Control Tab, change desktops on Linux. And that was the equivalent of rendering off screen. So I'd either check my email or whatever. I'm not sure if you guys who are on Linux know that. All right. Okay. So here are 2 different scenes. Oops, this one did not have a chance to cache yet. Stand by. Okay. I'm trying to get them to line up. 150 frames. 3, 4, 5. Here we go. So I'd say that if you look at this one, there's a real sense that he's stopping to really watch and really kind of concentrating on their every move. Whoever it is, they're a lot more interesting to this person than they are to this person. Okay? So after seeing that, after watching that, then that becomes a moment where we can ask ourselves, all right, but are there more paths? And what is basically down those paths that is hidden from us that we would actually need to see? This is a perfect moment, and this is a moment when, even in production, it's a good time to jump into the margin, work a little bit in the margin, okay? One nice thing about Maya's buffer curves is that they're almost like an infinite undo. I would most likely, in most cases, I would say, all right, you know, probably a good idea to save a new scene and do it in a new scene. But I've also seen people who just basically have 2 completely different pieces of animation saved in. One is the current animation, and the old one is just all the buffer curves, and flip between those just to see their different ideas. So that's a totally fine way to work. Okay, so just so you know, you have those 2 options at your disposal. Okay. So this is a great time to jump into the margins. And what I want to jump into the margins on is his actual look, okay? Because he, you know, leads the head with his eyes, but the fact that he kind of leans his body over with it, I think that there are more options here. And I like how the secondary is contributing to the animation. I like how it's making his character seem more interested, but I want to see how adjusting the relationship between the eyes, the head, and the body affect that as well. Basically, what I'm trying to see is I'm trying to test when does it stop being interested and more being kind of like he's incognito. Like, when does he go from like somebody who's just watching someone interested in a very interested way and turns into almost like a spy? All right, those would be the 2 extremes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my base animation layer first, so that I don't mess anything up on my you know, add anything to my finger tap layer. I'm going to lock it as well, just in case. And we're going to start doing this experiment. So basically, I want it to look like he's more secretive. So he's watching them with a little bit more hesitation or reservation to not get noticed themselves. Okay? And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to have the head and the body lag even more than they already are. Okay? So he looks up. And instead of all of that happening on those frames, I'm going to delay it a lot. Now, if you see here in my graph editor, pretty much everything is almost, you know, copied pairs in the entire body, almost. All right, which is cool. So I'm just going to look at where this transition happens. So that's him looking up basically, and then across. Okay. So very, very, very simple. I'm just going to delay all this by like maybe 8 frames. Okay. Plus equals 8. Oops. My bad. That's not what I want. Plus equals 8. There we go. All right. Now all I did now was just add 8 frames to the entire thing. And am I expecting the animation to look perfect on the body and the head? No, I'm not. That's not what we're doing. Am I expecting the performance to be anything? Am I expecting anything out of this? No. I just did it, and now I want to observe and judge the results. And that's the main kind of like change that I'm asking for. Instead of like thinking like, oh, here's an idea. Oh, no, it would be even better. Oh, you know, it would be even better. You cannot say what would be even better and better and better if you are not judging the idea you just had. When you get an idea, do it. You'll get faster at doing it. You'll get to better animation quicker. All right? Does that make sense? So, no judging. So it's a little bit of a trick I just pulled. When I said, am I expecting this? I'm not expecting anything. I just added it, and now we're going to watch, okay? And literally let it wash over you. This is not about what you were expecting. This is about you watching this as an audience member, almost, okay? Here we go. When I see this, it looks a little bit like the head movement is inappropriate for the delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change the head movement itself to be much slower. So let's see here. So I'm just going to key everything right here on 54. And on 33, I'm just going to delete all this. All right, so now it takes at least another, 6 or 7 frames to get up there. See, when I watch this, what I feel now is I see a guy who is almost, it looks like he's almost afraid to move. Now it looks like it's almost like he sees them and they're already walking by and he's pretty sure they didn't notice him look up, but he's a little afraid to move so that they don't see his head tracking them walk by. He is a little bit more incognito, a little bit more, spying on them. I wonder if this is the limit. Let's find out. I'm going to do another experiment. I'm going to grab it all, and I'm going to move not just this section that we're working on right now, but I'm going to move everything another 6 frames later. Plus equals 6. What am I expecting? Nothing. I have no idea what's going to happen here. But I do know that the result is going to be easily comparable to another choice that I did have. And if this doesn't reveal something to me, then I've walked down this path and I've seen what it has to offer, and it's no good. Okay? So then we watch. All right? Let's watch. Okay. So when I watch this, I say to myself, you know what? Not bad, but I've pretty much walked to the end of this road. And how long did this take? This took like 10 minutes maybe to do this. All right? Now we know, imagine we're on the job, you have an 8-hour day, sometimes 10-hour days, depends on where you work. But you have hours and hours and hours. Now we just kind of walked to the end of a path and saw, not really inspiring. Okay, I mean, it's really just a different choice. It's not a better choice. So I'm going to pull back from that path and we're going to try another one. Now I'd like to see if this whole thing is improved, if he's a little bit more surprised. And the way you do that is you have less transition time. Basically everything's a little bit snappier, a little bit quicker. And that's going to be a very simple thing to test as well. Knowing your tools and knowing how to wrangle them in the quickest way possible is a big part of this. So you need to up your skills in terms of drilling the component skills of scaling keys. If you have Maya 2013, the retime tool is pretty nice for that. I actually do use it. Dope Sheet, if you have everything in step mode or everything keyed on the same frame, Dope Sheet is probably the fastest way to do some really quick retiming. But anyway, so I walked to the end of this path. I don't really need to save any of these ideas that I've had because they really didn't work out. Okay. So now I'm going to see what it's like if he's a little bit more surprised. Okay. And what that's going to mean is I'm going to delay this, but I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to delay the end of this movement. I'm going to basically bring the start of this movement a few frames forward, which will make it shorter as well. So he's going to look up, and he's done by frame 46. Okay. One way we can do this is just grab everything and just scale it like this. We can scale it in the timeline itself. Now, am I worried about the fact that when I snap these keys, these two are going to overlap? No, they might not even be on the same controller because I have 3 or 4 controllers selected. So these 2 keyframes, let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see. There we go. So these 2 keyframes that are definitely going to be on the same frame once I snap it, I don't need to worry about that. Do I need to investigate that right now? No. Do I need to go into the graph editor and make sure they're not going to overlap and cancel each other out? No. Right? All we're doing is we're doing tests. We're working in the margin to get ourselves as many options in front of us as possible, out of our head and on the screen. Here we go. Let's watch it. That's interesting. There's kind of a long tail on this thing. It's almost as if okay. So in order to get a result that is not distracting now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to retime this again. So almost doing the moving hold trick is a way to make it actually snappy. Normally we might drag this keyframe and put it on this keyframe, let go and hit S to get a moving hold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this keyframe, which is almost at the full extent, and I'm going to drag it maybe 5 frames earlier, hit S, and now this action is snappier, and it goes into a little bit of a overshoot / moving hold because I'm on spline. See what I just did? Okay. That's what I'm talking about, having workflow methodologies that you can depend on. So if I said to you, and really honestly answer this question for yourself right now, if I asked you, okay, make that happen about 5 frames Make it happen 5 frames earlier, but I still want you to have, make it look semi-decent. I can't see if it's like stepped or if it's flat or whatever. Make it still look a little decent, so have, a little bit of kind of like an overshoot, just a hair of overshoot, kind of like a moving hold almost going on in there. If I know, and I'm not bragging, I have no reason to ring my own bell right now. This is all about you guys. But I have a method that I know I can depend on, and exactly the result that I got was what I was going for. And that's okay when you're talking about workflows and methodologies and techniques within Maya. That's totally awesome to have an idea of what you want and to know the keys or the strokes or whatever you need to do to get there precisely. That's fine. That's great. Do that. But don't think to yourself performance-wise or motion or composition or action or anything that you can drill really quickly and get a result that you can sit back and watch. Remember, you want to turn into that animator that is picking the best out of 5 or 10 choices, because you can. The trick is all of those choices were animated by you and animated really quickly. And you're basically just picking the best animation that you've done for this little moment. That's the only difference, okay? So now we have him looking up quicker, and it's got a little bit of kind of like settle on it because of how the splines work. And so let's watch. Here we go. Let's make it even quicker. Okay, let's make it even quicker. All right, too quick. Make it a little later. All right, let's make it all happen just a hair quicker, but earlier. Make that moving hold, that settle a little bit longer. Okay. Now, let's get that secondary involved. Let's go back to that finger tap. And when he notices, I'm going to key it, and it's going to be gone. It's be gone immediately. So key it down on 0. See how much that added right now? Let's try 1 frame. Let's try 1 frame earlier. Yeah, I like that. This moving hold is getting a little bit too out of control for that speed of that. So I just did the moving hold trick. See how concentrated he looks because that secondary on the finger dies instantly? So if this is starting to look a little weird to you, just like the way that I'm doing this, that's fine. That's fine. I was hoping it would a little bit. So it would distinguish itself, or you could see the difference between the way you're working right now and maybe this. But what I'm doing is I'm playing with performance. And if I know the standard workflow that most students adopt, I'm basically I'm taking this from what I know about Animation Mentor, of course. But if I'm going to compare this to what I'm doing right now to the standard workflow, then it's like night and day. Normally, you have your step keys, and you go into copy pairs, and you have your breakdowns and transitions, and you're basically working extremely pose to pose as long as you can, and whatever, and you're going straight at, you're trying if you can to put one perfect foot placed in front of another towards that finished animation. You're trying to do that. But here, I'm just like, I'm playing around with performance. One frame earlier. Who would think that that has anything to do with anything? Who would think that that really affects the animation in any way? It totally does. You can see it, right? Let me see one frame earlier, okay? Let me see one frame later. I'm going to delay all of this now. So right now we have a version where he looks up and he notices, and it clicks with him pretty quickly. Now I'm going to do one where it takes him a lot longer to click, like 10 frames. I'm going to use my graph editor to do this. 27 to 45. So I'm going to have him take 10 frames to figure this out. Okay? Or 10 extra frames, so like 16 frames total. All right, now he's not tracking them fast enough. Okay, so let's go back. Let's try 8 instead. We're just trying it. Again, we're doing tests. We're just feeling it out. All right, now the finger tap is obviously not working because it's almost like it's clicking with him, but then like his body takes a while to realize. So now we need it to be like on this frame. Still looks like it's a little late, right? Still looks too late. Yeah. Okay. But that's fine. That's good. We've walked to the end of this path, and I like what this path had to offer. If this was my shot, I probably would go back to the version that was the little bit longer moving hold, a little bit more, a little bit of a longer notice, but still delayed from the eyes. So it's eyes up, oh my God, and then they walk by. That was the stronger one for me. So I could either probably take me 4 minutes to go back to that one, if I was just moving the keys around, and another minute or two to just explore just in that little space, just a little bit more, a few more kind of tests just within that tiny little decision, and then I'm good. It's the lunch truck outside. Please ignore the La Cucaracha horn, please. So what a difference. Hopefully, what a difference between finding what you think in your head is going to be your best choice, your best goal, and actually drilling on your animation. Okay? You see that? You see that difference? Now, there is a huge issue, actually, that comes from the fact that we work with characters. Once you have all of those keys on your character, well, you can get, you can have a lot of play with what's there. But one problem that we have is that when you're doing like a cartoony action, it's a lot of effort to get that character pose and to get them right. And so I want to show you something that we did on the short film Booty Call when I was working in Czech Republic with the students. And a student brought to me their shot, and I love this shot. It had so much potential when it was pitched. I really was excited as it was coming together. But one thing needed to click for the student, which was really kind of the overall, like squint your eyes and just get the overall impression. And rather than take the student's work and try to work with the poses and everything, all the stuff that was in there, what I did was I just brought in a ball. I hid everything but the ball, and I just did a little bit of animation on the ball to show what it should like, the impression that it should give. And this was when the shot was, well, I'll show you where the shot was. Let me load it up. So this shot, obviously it's in the middle of the film, and this was literally the scene file. This is the exact scene file that this animator brought to my attention, and we sat down at my desk and we talked about it. So it's the shot where Babinski trips and lands and then kind of scrambles out of the scene. And what I said was, what we're not getting is we're not getting an overall impression. We're not getting a really strong impression from the choices that are right here. Like, it really doesn't feel like he pops and slams and it really doesn't seem like he pops up and really slams and that impact pops him up again. And that was really the idea behind the shot. We don't get that impression from what I see. But again, rather than grab the character and the controls and all that stuff, I knew if this was my shot, time for a test. Time to get a test. Is there a stronger impression I can give? Let me see that stronger impression. Let me not think to myself, is there a stronger impression I can give? Yes. So I'm going to animate the character stronger now. Oh my gosh, how much time will that take? Depending on if you have IK or FK arms, all that scramble, all of the posing, the spine is bent, there's keys on everything. Take a step back. Time for a test. Time to drill it. Okay? So this is what I did. I'm going to go through step by step exactly what I did. First thing I did was I made a sphere. And selection highlighting, manipulators, there we go. Here's my sphere. And the first thing I did was I just animated the sphere in place with where the character was. I just framed through basically. Okay? And doesn't take long, so I'll do it again. I'm going to start like right here. Now it needs to be just big enough that it kind of gives the impression of where he is. All right? So just as we're moving along, I want to make sure not to grab the wrong axis. See, and I can already tell, and as I was doing that, I could already tell, you know what? This is really close. It's just some spacing issues. And this is what I said. You know, this is what I said to the animator, and we got there pretty darn quickly. And then I definitely said, oh, way too long on the ground as well. Look how long he's on the ground, because we're not getting any movement here. And then look, it's not moving at all in this section, right? Finally, he starts getting to move. Okay, so here we have the ball, right? And so what I knew I had to do was just really focus on the impression that the ball was giving, okay? And make, if I can, make it as strong as possible, and then just fix my character to match the impression that the ball gives, all right? So you can do a couple things. An animatable motion trail is super advantageous to try to figure this stuff out sometimes. and we can just see right off the bat that we don't have the spacing that we want. We want them to come in and really pop with like a plateau almost, right? And then slam and then almost do like the normal bouncing ball. And it's just way too crunched up here. It's way too flat here. So we can just re-space this whole thing. But we really want to pop as well. So let me make sure that there's this nice strong movement into this one. So it's plateaued up here, not plateaued, but it's spaced nicely and evenly, and then it slows in a little bit and slows out and then kind of accelerates a little bit and then really pops out of this one. Really plateaus up here. Like this. And probably this is all spaced a little bit evenly. Still want it to be a little bit more slow in and slow out from this top pose, or not pose, position rather. Here we go. Now we're getting close. All right, 28, 29. Yeah, see now we're getting into the section where it's a little bit slower, right? Okay, so just taking that into consideration, also that I'm going to be deleting those two, and then on 30, so 33, I guess. So everything that's on 33, we would move up. Oops, what's that? Scale? Is that scale? Oh, that's fine. Okay. So that's the new 32. There we go. Cool. And just keep on working. And this all needs to be, can you scale these? Oh, that'd be so cool. If you could scale them in panel. Anyway, so we got a little bit of a mess crunched up here. Just ignore that on that side. I really just want the pop as well. And really nice, really awesome slow in here at the top of the new bounce. I'm calling this new bounce. And maybe get a little bit of like anticipation. So it slows in and then actually and then shoots out. All right, just move these. So now I'm going to hit Alt-H to only show the ball and him. Now let's see if, actually he shouldn't show. Let's see here, there we go. Now let's see the new impression of the ball. All right, boing, boing, whoosh. Boing, boing, whoosh. Well, let's frame it so we're not getting that ugly end of the animation. Boing, whoosh, whoosh. Boing, whoosh, whoosh. Right? A lot stronger, all right? Probably maybe 10 minutes more. I won't do it now, I'll just show you the end result. Probably about 10 minutes more of work on the ball and I would get to where I would switch over to the character. So let me load that scene and I'll show you. Okay, here is the very next save. I had brought the ball in and showed her what it needed. Okay, here's that ball, right? Oops, reference, there it is. All right, animated on 2s. Boing, and out. All right, now this was with a little bit of adjustment, just grabbing the root control of Babinski. Just a little bit of adjustment, grabbing the root control. Okay, just a tiny bit. Still hadn't been fully adjusted yet. Now let me show you the very end result. Okay, and what I think you'll notice is that when he pops up into the air, you get a really nice sense that he is totally airborne, but there is that kind of like tweak on the physics. Like the physics have just the right amount of breakage that the posing and the work that's done in the air has the right amount of kind of franticness, kind of fast speed, texture, kind of that quick to contrast with the slow. Everything was done right. This shot turned out really awesome. But imagine how much at least differently, not necessarily worse, but at least differently, this shot would have turned out if the animator had just continued on a path trying to make it just like stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, using the controls, using the character, dealing with all the keys that they had already. It's time at that moment to stop what you're doing, stop doing the multiplication on the test, move over to the margins. All right? Do work in the margins, drill, practice little tests, walk down paths, and then bring it back into the fold. Okay? Make yourself that animator that gets the opportunity to choose from awesome animation and make it your own. Okay? So here's how the shot ended up turning out. I think you'll agree it's pretty dope. Oops. Well, it's not playing at the right speed. Let me just play blast it here. So when you watch this, pay attention to those things that I pointed out, especially the impression that the slam gets. Oh, so awesome. Look how like he hangs in the air and then slams down. Oh, so awesome. And then the scramble on the floor really turned out super strong. This animator has a lot to be proud of. And I got an email from this animator saying that they had applied that technique just like the next week. They'd already worked again in the margins, already kind of like just went completely, just pushed everything out of the way, got exactly that strong impression that they wanted, and then brought it all back together, brought it back into the fold, and made it work. So, to summarize, we have a very, very interesting job because we can always see exactly what we want it to look like, but we rarely can say to ourselves that we know exactly at every given moment what skill or component piece of that shot is going to make or break it, is really going to turn it into what we see in our head, or basically be like a bad choice or just an uninteresting choice, right? You can see that scene when you hear, like if you listen to the 11-second club dialogue, you can see it in your head, exactly what you want to do. Like the character, and then they move like this, and then they take the person by the hand, and then they drop to a knee, and oh, everything's looking perfect in your mind. But you can't just copy paste that onto your, into Maya. Unfortunately, I'd love that. Would that be awesome? But you can't. So because you cannot at every given moment know exactly where that magic is going to come from. Give yourself every opportunity to pick it out of a few different tests that you've done. In the short term, you're going to get very slow, but it's going to be very short term. So for like a week, you're really going to just like struggle with all of this. But starting with 2 weeks of really drilling and really practicing and doing tiny, tiny, tiny little tests in the margins, or tests on your character that's making just the smallest adjustment and then judging it after you see it, your speed is going to just accelerate immensely. And I give you this promise, okay? After a few months, or at least like 10 shots, and I'm not talking about 11-second club shots here. I'm talking about, 2 to 4 second shots. But after a few months, maybe 10 shots, you will start doing those shots twice as fast. That's my promise, twice as fast as you are right now, all right? And just so happens that most shots in my career, 90% of my shots have been between 2 and 5 seconds. I've never had a 600 frame shot in animation ever. The longest shot I've ever had is maybe 220 frames. All right? Ever. Okay? So, it's good practice. All right? Practice is good practice. Well, that will do it. That will conclude our lecture today. I hope you learned a lot. You can suggest lectures if you want to see something talked about in a lecture in the future. Of course, there is the resource wish list in the forums where you can post there, or you can send me an email. I also love getting asked video email questions. So if you haven't done one of those, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's free to do on the site, and you get basically a tutorial recorded just for you, but everyone can benefit as well. So thanks for being a part of the site. There's a lot coming up. Always more to do here on KennyRoy.com. I am really enjoying being a part of your animation training. Tell your friends, and just let's let this community grow. It's all about you. Keep kicking butt on your animation, and as always, rock on.